Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So glad you're joining us again as we sift through the material you've shared and try to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. Today, we're diving into something really quite fascinating and, well, frankly, quite topical, this aircraft people call Russia's eye in the sky.
That's the one. We've got a pile of sources here looking at the Beriev A-50 Mainstay. It's their big airborne early warning and control plane AEW&C. Anyone following military tech knows these are crucial assets.
But the A-50, it has a specific history, and it's run into some serious problems lately, as the report suggests.
Right. So our mission today, basically, is to unpack this A-50. What is it? How's it different? How does it compare to others? What's it actually done?
And critically, why all the recent focus? Why are these reported losses such a big deal? We'll pull it all straight from the information we've been given.
Think of it as us trying to get that same high-altitude perspective. Understand what this thing does and what happens when it gets taken out of the sky. Let's jump right in. So to really get why this plane matters so much and maybe why it's become such a target, we need to start with the basics. What exactly is the A-50 Mainstay designed for?
Right. So fundamentally, it's Russia's primary AEW&C platform. You hear AEW&C, or sometimes people in the West just say AWACS kind of generically.
Sure.
Its main job, the sources are clear, is detection. Spotting targets, planes, missiles, ships, even ground targets across a huge area, building that complete picture of the battle space.
And it wasn't like designed from scratch, was it? Our material mentioned it's built on a pretty well-known plane.
Exactly. It was developed by the Beriev Design Bureau, but they based it on the Aviation Il-76 transport, a real workhorse.
Okay.
And that was a specific choice to replace the older Tupolev Tu-126 Moss. Using the Il-76 gave it some built-in advantages.
Like what, for instance? What's the big plus of sticking a radar on a cargo plane, essentially?
Well, the biggest advantage, and the sources really hammer this home, is altitude. Get that radar way up high, and you see much, much farther than ground radar.
Overcomes the horizon problem.
Yeah, precisely. It basically eliminates the blind spots caused by the Earth's curvature. It gives you that massive surveillance footprint.
And that big mushroom thing on its back, the rotating dome, that's the key piece of kit.
That's the heart of it, yeah. That radome houses the surveillance radar system. Originally, it was called Liana, but the main one we hear about is the Schmel system, especially in the later variants.
Sounds complex. Takes a lot of people to run one.
It does. The sources say typically 5 flight crew pilots, engineers, navigators, plus around 10 mission specialists.
10 more, wow.
Yeah, those are the operators managing the radar, the sensors, analyzing the data, communicating, directing other aircraft. It's very much a flying command post.
So not just seeing, but directing the fight too.
Exactly. Coordinating fighters, maybe strike aircraft, feeding them targeting info, managing the air picture for commanders on the ground. It first flew late 70s, entered service mid-80s. One source mentioned around 40 were built back in the Soviet days.
Okay, Soviet era. But military tech doesn't stand still. The sources talked about upgrades, right? Variants. What's the main one?
The big one is definitely the A-50U. That's the significant modernization effort. New digital systems inside, new computers, and crucially, the upgraded Schmel-M radar.
Schmel-M. Okay, and what did that M upgrade really bring to the table? Just seeing further or more to it?
It definitely saw further, but it was more than just range. The sources emphasize the A-50U's improved data processing, much better tracking. The Schmel-M is quoted as tracking air targets out to 650 kilometers.
650K, that's huge.
It is, and ground targets out to 300 kilometers. But maybe the bigger leap, according to the material, was its capacity.
Capacity
Meaning how many things it could track at once. The A-50U is listed as tracking around 300 ground or 40 air targets simultaneously. That's a massive jump from the original Schmel. Really turns it into a proper battle management hub.
Right, managing that much data must require those digital upgrades you mentioned. The forces also touched on export versions, something about India.
Yeah, the A-50EI for India. That's an interesting case. It's the Russian Il-76 plane, but fitted with Israeli Falcon radar systems and sensors, plus improved Russian engines. A real international mix.
Israeli radar on a Russian plane. Interesting. Speaking of international, how does the A-50 stack up against planes from other countries? What do our sources say?
Well, using that Indian A-50EI example, it's noted as having really excellent radar performance, especially in what the sources call cluttered airspace.
Cluttered airspace?
Yeah.
Meaning like Lots of interference, ground reflections, that sort of thing.
Exactly. The Israeli Falcon radar is apparently very good at picking targets out from all that background noise, and the better engines help its performance, too.
So potentially the export version was better in some ways.
Yeah.
But there was a catch for India, right?
There was. The sources point out that mixing major components from different countries, especially Russia and, well, the West via Israel, makes maintenance a nightmare. And that's apparently gotten much harder and more expensive because of sanctions on Russia, impacting India's plans to get more of them or keep them flying easily.
Makes sense. And what about the classic comparison, the American E-3 Sentry, the AWACS everyone knows?
The E-3, based on the Boeing 707, sources say it's generally easier to fly, better flight characteristics overall. But the A-50, because it's based on that rugged IL-76...
back to the rough field capability.
Right. It can operate from less pristine runways, which the E-3 generally can't. Functionally, the A-50U is seen as similar to the E-3, doing the same job, but one source was careful to say a direct performance comparison. Well, it remains to be seen. Different philosophies, maybe.
Okay, so beyond the specs, this plane has actually been places, done things. What does the operational history look like?
Well, sources mention it being used over the Black Sea back during the first Gulf War, mostly monitoring things.
Okay, that's going back a bit. More recently.
Syria. Starting in late 2015, they deployed them, flying missions from bases inside Russia.
And that was important. Why? Just surveillance.
According to the sources, it was partly surveillance, but also a chance to really test and compare the older A-50s alongside the newer A-50Us in a live combat environment. They also sent one down to Crimea in late 2018, so yeah, it's been actively used for integrating into their command structure.
Which brings us, unfortunately, to its role and fate in the current conflict in Ukraine. Yeah. This is where it's really hit the headlines.
It really has, and not in a good way for Russia. The first major incident mentioned in the sources was back in February 2023. An A-50 reportedly damaged by a drone attack while it was parked at an airbase in Belarus.
Right, I remember that. There was some back and forth about how bad the damage was.
Initially, yeah. Conflicting reports. But then video apparently surfaced that seemed to show a small drone actually landing right on the radar dome. Suggests the potential for pretty serious damage was real.
Wow. And beyond physical attacks, the sources mention it being integrated with their air defenses, specifically the S-400 system. How does that work?
Yeah. Yes, this is a really key point raised. The idea described is the A-50 uses its powerful radar to spot targets, maybe incoming fighters like F-16s, much further out than ground radar can see.
Okay.
Then it essentially hands off that target information to an S-400 battery, guiding the missile towards the target's general area. The missile flies out, and only then does its own smaller radar turn on to find and lock onto the target for the final kill.
So the A-50 acts like a long-range spotter for the missile system.
Exactly. It extends the S-400's engagement envelope massively, theoretically. A dangerous combination if it works as intended.
But then things started to go wrong for the A-50s themselves in early 2024.
Very wrong. January 14th, 2024. Big news, Ukraine claimed they shot down an A-50 over the Sea of Azov.
And didn't some Russian bloggers or sources immediately suggest friendly fire?
That was the initial chatter from some corners, yes. Friendly fire. But then later, a U.S. Army official reportedly confirmed the shootdown and specifically attributed it to a Ukrainian Patriot missile system. Shows how murky the information war gets.
Indeed. And then just over a month later, it happened again.
Astonishingly, yes. February 23rd, 2024. Ukraine claimed another A-50U shot down. This time over Krasnodar Krai in Russia, but still near the Sea of Azov region.
And the weapons sighted this time.
Ukrainian sources pointed to an old Soviet-era S-200 long-range missile system, possibly modified. And again, some Russian military bloggers apparently floated friendly fire as the explanation.
The S-200, that's an older system. The location being reported like 200-plus kilometers from the front.
Yeah.
That definitely got people talking about missile ranges and capabilities, didn't it?
It certainly did. And the sources also highlighted the human cost that time, reporting 10 crew members killed, including 5 majors. A terrible loss of experienced personnel.
Absolutely. And as if losing the planes wasn't bad enough, the place they fixed them got hit too.
Yeah, adding insult to injury, basically. The repair and modernization plant in Taganrog was reportedly damaged by a strike in March 2024, which, obviously impacts their ability to maintain the ones they have left.
And the pressure hasn't let up. We saw reports quite recently, June 1st, 2025, involving Ukraine's SBU,
That's right, the SBU, their security service. They claimed responsibility for damaging an A-50 on the ground at the Ivanovo Air Base. It was part of this big drone operation they called Operation Spider's Web.
On the ground this time. How?
Well, journalist reports, who said they saw SBU footage, described FPV drones, those small, fast drones, specifically hitting the radar domes of two separate A-50s parked at the base.
2 domes hit by FPVs. That sounds incredibly precise.
Very targeted, and this was apparently part of a much wider operation hitting strategic air assets across several Russian bases simultaneously. One journalist reporting on this cited the potential impact.
So what was the number?
They suggested this attack could mean Russia is down to maybe only 4 operational A-50s left, just 4.
4. Wow. Okay, so let's connect the dots. Why is losing these planes or having them damaged such a big blow? What's the strategic significance here?
It's huge, and the sources really spell it out. First, sheer numbers. Russia just doesn't have that many of these to begin with. The estimates we saw went from maybe just over 10 left from the Soviet days down to 9 in January 24, then maybe 6 after the February shootdown, and now potentially just 4 after this latest claimed attack in June 25.
That's a steep decline. And
Yeah.
can they just build more?
Apparently not. The sources indicate the Russian defense industry cannot produce new A-50 airframes. Their capacity seems limited to just modernizing the existing old ones, which itself takes a long time, maybe a year per plane.
So every loss is basically permanent for the foreseeable future anyway.
Effectively, yes. Irreversible. And it's not just the plane itself.
The crew. You mentioned the specialized crew earlier.
Exactly. This is maybe even more critical. The sources highlight losing those 10 or so highly trained mission specialists on board. That's a devastating blow. It takes years and years to train those operators.
Right.
Losing them degrades the effectiveness of any A-50 they fly, even if the plane itself is fine. You can't just plug in new people easily.
And what does this do to Russia's broader military posture or claims? Like countering Western planes?
Well, it directly undermines some of their narratives, doesn't it? The A-50 was supposed to be a key tool for detecting and helping target advanced Western aircraft like the F-16s potentially coming to Ukraine. If you don't have enough working A-50s or experienced crews to run them, that capability is seriously degraded. It creates big gaps.
So pulling it all together, what's the bottom line impact of losing these eyes in the sky?
The bottom line is a significant reduction in Russia's aerial surveillance command and control. Less ability to see threats coming, especially low-flying ones that ground radar misses. Less ability to effectively coordinate their own air operations. It creates blind spots, makes their whole air defense and attack system less potent, less aware.
So it's a really stark picture painted by the sources we looked at. A vital, complex machine facing incredible pressure and losses in modern warfare.
It really is. We've seen how the A-50 is designed to be the central hub for awareness and control, but also how vulnerable even these high-value, high-flying assets can be.
And the conflicting narratives around how they were lost friendly fire versus enemy action just highlights that intense information war happening alongside the physical one.
Definitely. It's complex on every level.
Well, this has been fascinating, if sobering. Now, before we finish up, if you found this deep dive useful, if it helped you understand this complex topic a bit better, we'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like this video, maybe share it with others who follow this stuff, and definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.
Yeah, that engagement really does help us keep digging into these materials and bringing these discussions to you. We appreciate the support.
We absolutely do. So maybe the thought to leave everyone with today, building on all this.
Yeah, perhaps it's this. In warfare today, we're seeing everything, knowing everything, that situational awareness is so critical. What happens when the tool specifically designed to give you that all-seeing eye starts getting poked out? How does blinding the eye in the sky fundamentally change the game on the ground and in the air in ways we might not even fully see yet?
What happens when the eye is blinded? A powerful question indeed. Thanks again for joining us for this deep dive on the A-50 Mainstay.